Anytime somebody talks to you about indexes, they always say, well, you should only have an index if it's being used. And so what I want to show you here in Transact SQL are a couple of relatively easy ways for you to tell if an index is being used. And then I'm going to kind of give you a little challenge to make this a little more useful for you. I started to do this for you and I thought, no, this would be kind of cool, kind of like homework. What I want to show you here is there's a new object in SQL 2008 that's really, really cool. Let me put it down here for you. They're called DMVs, if you will, DMVs. That is a dynamic management view. Now these are views that Microsoft built for us in SQL Server that allows us to see some things very easily. And what I want to show you here is, and I've already kind of written it out for you, I'm just going to highlight it and execute it. Notice I'm selecting all the columns from the sys.dm_db_index_usage_stats DMV. And I'm going to get all the columns and I'm going to say where the database ID is equal to the DB ID of pubs. So I'm going to work with the pubs database and I want to see the indexes that are out there on the employee table and how they're being used. So I will run this and you're going to notice that first of all I don't get any data back. Now why? And I'm going to make this go away and I'm going to make this smaller. The reason I didn't get anything back here, these statistics are basically kept for you off in an area that you can't get to easily, and they are cumulative since the last time SQL Server restarted. So I restarted my SQL Server to clear these out, and I'm going to show you how we can use them. First of all, if I just want to do a scan, so I just want to select asterisk from employee in the pubs. Notice there's an employee table in the pubs database. If I execute that, there's my results of that query. And I go back and run this now, you're going to notice I have a line of data. And notice what it's saying, that index ID number 1 was used, and it was a user scan. And so a scan took place, meaning it read every line in the table. And if I scroll over here, I can see the last seek, the last scan, last system scan, but that's the last user scan, and this gives me a date and time and so forth. It's a lot of information there. Let me go back to my select asterisk from employee, and let's do a last name of Brown. So we'll select LName from employee, where LName equals Brown. And we will run that one. Then we will go back, run our query again, and you will notice that it did a seek that time. Okay, that's kind of cool. It did a seek using that same index, which is index ID number 1. Now, the question is, well, what index is that? Well, I want to show you a couple of things, and this kind of turns into your homework. But notice I've done 2 scans, and I've done 1 seek. So the 2 scans were the select everythings, and the user seek, it actually used an index to provide that for me. So if I come down here, there's a table out there, a system table in every database, and we can see this by using the sysObjects object. And I'm just going to select name from sysObjects, and you will see that it will return for me the names in the sysObjects. Now notice these are indexes. And actually, let me change that to an asterisk so you can see it. Hope I'm not confusing you here, but notice I can see everything. This is every object in my pubs database, and you can see columns and so forth. And as I come on down, I can start to see, first of all, my tables themselves, and you can see over here that it's a user table. Then I can see the primary keys on particular tables. So all that information is out there somewhere. I just need to find a way to get to it. And then there's a view out there called sysIndexes that will let me actually see the indexes that are out there on each of my tables in the database. And if I scroll on down, you see I can start to see them down here, and I can see the name of the indexes and the index ID. Well, if I put those 2 together, and I will change the table name that I'm looking for to employee, and that's the right, and yes, and I'll highlight that and just run it. Notice it shows me the 2 indexes on the employee table. The one with the ID of number 1 is just the employee index, and if I go chase that down, I can see that's non-clustered, and the primary keys are clustered is index number 2. So when I go back up here and run this, I know that on both of these, it was using the non-clustered index. Let me show you one more thing here without absolutely boring you to death, and you can come back and look at these a little bit later. But if I go to the employee and look at indexes, the primary key is on the employee ID. So if I go out and do my select asterisk from employee, and highlight just that and run it. Let's look at some IDs. And the IDs are not user-friendly. Let me grab a short one. I was hoping that I could grab one real easy. And you'll see what I'm doing here, right? EMP_ID. Can't talk and type at the same time, so just entertain yourself while I'm typing. Now if I run this query, it comes back with that one result. And now if I execute this, you will see that I used index 2 and did a seek because I used the primary key and it used that primary key index to find that. I hope all this is making sense to you. Go back and look through this real slowly. Notice I can do this on the authors table just by changing this. Feel free to copy my code here and use it. So there's the information on the authors table, the number of seeks and scans since the last time I was restarted. I can come down here and make this authors, and I can see the same information on the authors table. What are my indexes? There they are. So a lot of really cool things you can do if you kind of dig in here a little bit. I hope this will help you kind of get the gears turning. You can kind of go start hacking around with some T-SQL. What would be really cool is to build yourself a stored procedure, which we'll talk about later, and just drop this table name in and have it go pull all that data for you. But that's one cool way of knowing if your indexes are being used or not.